Hello, and we're back once again. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Mental Health, the New Wealth. I am your host, Nikita Nicole, the Illuminist, and I am so glad that you were able to join me for yet another episode. So, this week has been quite a week for me, and I have been dealing with something that initially I didn't think was an issue, but as I continue to move forward this week, I saw that it kept coming up over and over, which let me know that this is something that I needed to work on and work through and change my perspective regarding my thought process and how I'm going to move forward in life. So, the topic that we're going to talk about today is the cousin of assumption, and it is one of the precursors to anxiety and depression. The more that you use and utilize this lower level energy, the more you can send yourself on a downward spiral due to disappointment and unrealistic judgments on yourself and others. The topic that we're going to cover today is expectations. Expectations is a pretty small thing, but it's something that we all use on a regular everyday basis in our everyday relationships, in our everyday cultures and customs, whether it be economic or personal standards. We're not only going to talk about what expectations are, but what they look like for each of us in our everyday lives, what we are able to do to develop healthier levels of expectation to alleviate some of the issues that we create for ourselves. So sit back, relax, and let's get into this episode. Before we get into this episode, let me say that I am not a licensed mental health professional nor doctor, although I will host licensed professionals as guests from time to time. The mental health difficulties discussed on this podcast will come from extensive research, life experiences of myself and others, and are not to be taken as diagnosis, prescription, or cure to any health mental difficulties or disorders. If you are experiencing deep mental health difficulties of any kind and have lasted for any duration of time, please contact your local mental health professional for assistance with treatment. If you or someone you know is suffering with mental distress or thoughts of suicide, you are not alone. Please call the toll free National Suicide Prevention Hotline, open 24/7 at 1 800 273 8255. Again, that is 1 800 273 8255. Now let's get into the episode. Expectation comes from a Latin word, expectationum, which means an awaiting. Webster's dictionary defines expectations as the act or state of expecting, a strong belief that something will happen or be the cause in the future. Anticipation and expectation of what would happen, something expected or something not quite up to expectations. Hey y'all, so welcome back. This week was a little harder for me because there were so many things going on this week that I had to tackle and make sure that we're taken care of. And I had to make sure that you guys had your podcast on Friday at 9 Eastern Standard. I'm not going to forget that. So, because of that, there were a lot of fires that I had to put out and a lot of things that I had to take care of. However, I noticed that as I was going on throughout the week, that there were a lot of things that I was dealing with so far as my expectations or what I expected. And so today I wanted to talk about expectations because it's very important. It's a two-edged sword because on one hand, you want to have a certain level of standard or expectation, but on the other hand, you don't want to lead in expectation, assuming or judging what you feel a situation or a person should be doing or the outcome of a thing. And so I was experiencing that this week because there were so many things that have changed from what I remember originally, right? So even when it came to ordering different things or customer service or just handling and taking care of business, I was discovering that the past expectations that I had or had grown accustomed to were no longer the expectations that I was experiencing. And so it was making me really frustrated. And I kept on bumping my head on certain situations because I just could not understand what was going on. So just say for instance, if you're paying for a certain service, you expect to get that service. You don't expect to have to get the runaround with customer service when it's time for you to utilize the service that you've been paying for. When you get food that you've gotten or ordered from a certain location several times before, you expect the same level of service, if not greater. When you go to the bank and handle business, it's customary. You expect certain things to happen. When you are kind and do someone a favor, you are expect to be shown gratitude. So there are so many things that I kind of dealt with this week that were not quite what I expected. And I had to step back and think about, why have you been so bothered regarding these things that you have expected? And then where did these level of expectations come from? So for me, these level of expectations came from past experiences. Doing things the same way over and over, you expect for the experience to be the same or greater. Now, yes, there's going to be glitches here and there. There's going to be problems here and there with every situation or scenario, but you don't necessarily expect for something that you have been doing for quite some time to be different. And that is the world that we're living in right now. And so I had to step back and tell myself that you have to change and shift your perspective and what you expect versus what is being shown to you right now so that you don't walk around and are frustrated. And there's so many ways that we use expectation. It's a part of every thought process that we have. When you're driving and you come up to a red light, you expect for the light to change at a certain time. You expect for there to be a certain level of courtesy. When you do certain things in your relationships, you expect to get a certain response. And so we use expectation in every facet of our lives, whether we know it or not. And when our expectations are not met, then there is a certain level of disappointment that we experience from our expectations not being met, or having too high of expectations, too low of expectations. So it's very important to adjust our expectations so that we are able to maneuver properly in this world. What expectation do you hold for yourself and others? What expectations do you have in your relationships? Whether it is your parent, your mate, what expectations do you have in dating now? There are so many things that have changed from what we remember. And a lot of wounds and baggage that we carry around are based off of expectations, especially in relationships with those that are closest to us. So you would hope that as you grow up and you are living your life, that your mother would be a mother, your father would be a father, your grandparents would exemplify the expectations that you would have for grandparents. And when that does not become true, or you see different examples of what that looks like, and that's not what you live on an everyday basis, you develop woundings and triggers regarding the expectations that you have created and cultivated. What are societal expectations? The white picket fence. Oh, when you get a certain age, you're supposed to be married and have 2.5 children and a dog, and you guys are supposed to be living the American dream. But what is that? What is the American dream? And why do I need to be doing that? And what if I don't want to do that? Why are these type of expectations being put on me, or why do I put certain expectations on myself? Since the pandemic, there has been so much of an influx in entrepreneurship. People are discovering That a lot of the time, money, and effort that they were putting into making other people's dreams come true, that they can do these things for themselves. And so there was a skyrocketing in entrepreneurship. But due to that, everyone right now is expected to be a boss. Oh, you're supposed to be a boss. You're supposed to have your own business. You're supposed to be an entrepreneur. You're supposed to be making it happen. And what if that's not your structure? What if you're not set up that way? What if you're most comfortable in a 9 to 5? What if your objective is to serve and serving in helping to make other people's dreams come true? What if that is you? But the societal expectation of you being an entrepreneur, or on the opposite spectrum, being an everyday collar worker, making things happen for a check, and going along with the status quo might be heavy pressure on you, because that is not the expectation that you agree with or have for your life or others around you. This is a changing world. Everything is in the ebb and flow. Everything is moving around so drastically that you do have to step back and look at what you decide to be true and what you expect for yourself and those around you. And what I've discovered this week is what's best for me is to not have any expectations, to go into situations open and free. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you should not have standards by which that you operate, standards for which that you hold yourself and others responsible, but don't expect anyone to do the things that you do. I remember that I used to be hurt when people didn't operate in the way that I operated. I wouldn't have did that like that, or I wouldn't have did that person like that, or I would have handled this situation this way. But I discovered that these people and these situations are not me. I cannot go around expecting for people to do things as I would do them. That would make you not an individual. That would make you me. And there is only one me, as there is only one you. You can't get upset because what you expected is not coming to fruition. Expectations is a level of judgment. And when you operate out of that level, you always end up disappointed because most often it never happens as you see it happening. If you look around, the people around you will show you an immediate example of what your expectations are or what your standards are. If I will pull up your social media or look at what you entertain yourself with on a regular basis, that will show me what your expectations are and what your standards are. And to do that, that is a judgment, because who am I to say what is good and what is not good for you? If you look immediately around you and the people that you choose to surround yourself with, the activities that you choose to do, the things that you choose for entertainment, I can see what your expectations are. And your life will yield those said expectations. So, expectations is not only a lower level vibration, it is something that should be looked into deeply, but they should be transferred into standards, because standards is of a higher vibration. Standards is something that I am going to require of you because I require that same thing of myself. I expected you to get up and be the best person that you can be and go out here and show love and spread light, because I am also doing the same thing. So I hold that as a standard in my life, not an expectation, not something that you are held to do or I think that you should do. And I'm not doing that. I'm going to do that also. So when you look at expectations, look at it in that way. It's important to evaluate what your expectations are. You have been in relationships with people for quite some time. It's about time to ask them what their expectations are of you. What do they expect in a friend? What do you expect in a partner? What do you expect in a mate? What do you expect? And then you need to discuss with them what you require and what you expect. The same thing with friendships. What do you expect? What do we expect in general? What do we expect from these people that we call celebrity? These people just end up being someone that has a talent, that has emphasized and maximized their talent to share with the world, so that we all would be able to lift our vibrations based off of the talent that they have honed in on. Why do we expect so much of them and they are regular people? What are your expectations? What do you expect from a spiritual practice? What do you expect from a certain sect of religion? What do you expect? What are your expectations of these things? And so, because expectations kind of come with a lower level connotation, let's call them standards. Standards is something that is reciprocal. The same standards that I hold for myself, I should hold for others. I shouldn't say that there are certain standards for you and I don't abide by those standards. And so expectations is kind of a one-sided entity. So let's use standards. What are your standards for living? How do you show up for yourself and others in the everyday world? What are those standards? So until you are able to openly convey and communicate these things, especially in this new world that we are living and evolving in, then there is going to be a lot of misunderstandings. There is going to be a lot of frustration on your part and on the part of others because people are going around with outdated expectations. You should expect nothing from no one but change. You should expect nothing from no one but to authentically be themselves. That's what your expectation should be, or your standard should be for yourself and those around you. If you hold anything other than that, then you are going to continuously and on a regular basis be disappointed, and disappointed from something that you can avoid. What are your expectations of yourself? What are your standards of yourself? How do you hold yourself in high regard on a regular basis? If you cannot answer that for yourself, then you have no business expecting or enforcing any level of standard on anyone else. Everything has an ebb and flow, a yin and yang. So, because of this, there are different levels of expectation, but you want to steer clear away from the expectation that is riddled with judgment. There are definitely positive levels of expectation. In different spiritual doctrines and even in the Bible, they speak about speaking things into existence, maneuvering as if things are already happening. So, that is a different level of expectation. If you are wanting to get out of your situation, you are expecting for greater. If you want to move into a new house, you're expecting a new house. Thank you so much for this new house and this new situation that I have. Thank you for this new job, this new environment. But that level of expectation transforms from expectation into hopefulness and gratitude. It is almost as if you are going into the situation anticipating the greatness of what is about to happen for you. So, case in point, instead of using the lower level energy of expectation, oh, I think that this should happen, or I ordered this food, so it should taste like this, going into the situation open and saying, thank you so much for the resources to be able to purchase this food. I know that this food will be nourishing for my body, and I'm so excited that it will be tasty. Now, whether it tastes like what you remember it tastes like, whether it has the exact same seasoning and the accoutrement and condiments that comes with it, that is none of your concern. You are to be in the moment and not expect certain things to happen. But you do need to go into situations full of gratitude and knowing and excited for what could be the possibility, not just almost waiting for the bottom to fall out of certain situations or having a preconceived notion. So when that does not happen, then you are fostering more negative lower level energy by being disappointed, by being anxious, and then over time turning into a certain level of depression. It's very important that you don't have any expectations, but you set standards and are grateful for the possibilities of what could be. Once you start operating in that manner, as I did this week, everything will become a lot easier for you to deal with because you're almost a bystander watching circumstances and situations happen in your life instead of always having to control a situation or influence an outcome. Once you are able to step outside of that arena, life is really able to start happening for you in ways that you have never seen before. So I will repeat. Instead of using expectations in the lower level vibration, we need to expect the things that are coming that are great and excellent for us in gratitude. When you make assumptions or expect certain things, you only make a fool out of you. So let's try to change the trajectory of how we think and in our relationships, in society, and the world in general. Let's have more compassion for ourselves and others and not expect certain things. Even though it might be what you might remember, be open enough to go forward into situations with no expectations. Standards, but no expectations. When you let expectations reign, they ruin the possibility of the new experiences that you could have. You will always be disappointed because things most often never equal up to what you figure that they should be. So let's talk about some different things that we can do on a regular basis and what I had to do this week to work through the expectations and the disappointments that I continue to have all this week. I hope that these new tweaks are able to help you with your perspective and expectations and frees you from future disappointment and anxiety. So, first and foremost, when dealing with expectations, give yourself grace and compassion. You must start with yourself first before you are able to extend it to anyone else. Lighten up on yourself. Give yourself grace and compassion. When you are able to do that, then you can do it with others. Also, change your perspective. Normally, expectations are built off of past experiences that we deem to be true in the future. Usually, I go to the bank, I go inside of the bank, I make my transaction, I get my receipt, and I leave. But in this new world, most oftentimes we can't even go into the banking center. It is customary now for us to go to the ATM or use drive up tellers. It is customary now to have a whole lot of customer service that is done by artificial intelligence. So, because we are seeing these changes, not only in our everyday lives, but when our in our interpersonal relationships that we have on a regular basis, we need to change our perspective. We need to let go of those past expectations that no longer serve what is going on in our lives on an everyday basis. So, because we need to do that, it is important to adapt to the changes of the expectations. So, if you notice that something has happened more than a couple times over and over, then it would be smart for you to let go of that expectation. If it hasn't happened the same way over a number of times, and once you are able to release that expectation, then there will be no disappointment linked up to that. Now, there is a certain level of mourning that you experience when something is no longer the way it is. Case in point, I am from Bay Area, California. I love where I'm from. I love California down deep in my soul. However, when I go back now to visit, there are so many things that are different. And so, case in point, it was so funny. I got my rental, I was on my way to my destination, and I had my toll in my hand. I made sure that I went out of my way to get these dollars for toll, right? So I go to the toll and notice that there are no toll takers. Everything is automated. So you just drive straight through, and then they send a bill to the person that is honored with the registration to pay the toll. And I was blew away because that wasn't my expectation. That's not what I remembered. I expected for there to be toll takers in the future, but that isn't the case. So when you see things change, instead of being frustrated over and over at the change, accept that it is no longer what you expect. Something else that you can do to help with expectation is communicate openly. If you are able to communicate openly, you are able to nip a lot of miscommunication and misinformation in the bud. So, open the communication when ordering and say, do you guys still do this? Do you guys still have that? Do I have to pay additional for this? Even in different service industries, as a beauty professional, it is important to say, would you still like this? Okay, I'm just letting you know that that service is going to cost this amount. Are you okay with that? So that you give people opportunity to openly adapt to the new changes and the new expectations and look forward to the way that things will be going from this point forward. That way, they are able to change their expectations on their own. Especially now that we're going through, am I expected to wear a mask? If I come into this building, am I expected to be vaccinated? What are your expectations for me so that I can govern myself in the way that I need to looking forward? That is something that I really had to grasp this week. I told y'all last week I scheduled myself an appointment for the spa. I was so excited to get my services. However, I'm used to being able to go into the spa and sit in like the sauna room or different things, but because of COVID, those things were closed or they were not available. And so, because I did not openly ask, even though I expected them to be there because they had always been there when I had gone to a spa, I was disappointed. I still had a good time. I still went and got my services and shared and showed myself self care. However, some of that experience was taken away from me because I was slightly disappointed in the expectation that I had based off of what I remembered. So if I had asked them prior, do you guys have these amenities? Do you still do this? Then I would have known prior to going that that is not something that I would be experiencing to prepare myself for the outcome. And that is yet another thing that you can do to work on expectations. Prepare for the outcome. And we're going to use the word outcome instead of problem because things are not problems. Problems are something that is hard to bypass or they're difficult. No, we want to prepare for the outcomes. So, because you might not be able to expect what kind of traffic is going to be ahead of you, if you're going to a new place or you need to make it to an appointment, it's important that you prepare for the outcome. So, what does that look like? That looks like leaving early. That looks like getting gas before you hit the road. That looks like asking questions, openly communicating. That looks like just preparing yourself for anything that might throw a monkey wrench or a glitch into what you have going on. If you are using your foresight and your wisdom and intuition to prepare you for the situations that you are going in, then you will have a better outcome. Still being open, still allowing things to happen as they will, and still having your regular standards. But when you prepare for the outcome that you desire, then most oftentimes than not, you receive the outcome that you want. Most importantly, in all of this, is do not judge or hold expectations. Don't judge yourself. Don't judge others. I should have did this. They should have did that. Why did they do this? Especially in this day and age, people are operating out of autopilot. And sometimes people don't even know why they're doing what they're doing or why they're operating in the way that they're operating. Sometimes people are not aware of that. Or if they are, they've discovered new ways that work best for them that you might not remember, that you might not resonate with, but it works for them. Just as you are doing things that work for you. So change and adapt and mold yourself into being agile in all situations, being flexible and not judging. That's why I never understood this cancel culture. You can't cancel me or nobody else. Who are you to cancel anyone? That cancel culture is based off of judging. And majority of the people that are in cancel culture or going around canceling people or banning people have planks in their own eye. Remove the plank out of your eye first before you address the plank in someone else's eye. Or better stated, as in the Bible, ye without issues or sin, cast the first stone. None of us can do that. So, because we are not able to do that, let's love on each other. Let's have compassion. Let's come from a place of understanding and let's work on these new perspectives so that we won't have expectations and not be disappointed, not have anxiety, not go through depression because we expect something so heavily of ourselves and others. So I hope this episode was able to help you understand what expectations are and how you can work through expectations to balance how you show up in your everyday life. I hope you were able to use some of the things that we discussed today to change your perspective, to give others grace, and to operate in the highest level of love, peace, and acceptance. And as you are working through and adjusting your different levels of expectation, always remember your mental health is